All right, everybody, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. We're at Chickies and Pete's in Atlantic City at the Tropicana. Of course, every Thursday, you can come on out and see the show at the Trop. We're there 3 times a month, and then 1 time we'll be at the EHT location. So make an appointment to come on out and see the Sports Bash Live. Rob Maaddi's here from the Associated Press. The NFL season is here, and Rob's appearance today is brought to you by Resorts Casino Hotel in Atlantic City. And, of course, Atlantic City, gambling, football, it's all back. But the big daddy tonight, Rob Maaddi, you are going to be there, Bucks and Cowboys. So let's start with that since we've been talking Eagles a lot today. Let's kind of get your take and your feel around Tom Brady making his 300th career start, 44 years old. They're the favorites still, and a lot of people think this team is better than the team we saw last year.
It is pretty incredible what Tom has been able to do throughout his career and how he just came from, left New England, left Bill Belichick, left what they created there, what they built there, that dynasty, and went to Tampa and was able to win a Super Bowl in his first year and to do it the hard way, having to go on the road for 3 games to win as a wild card and then getting the home field advantage in the Super Bowl. So that was, it was just an incredible year last season. And now, Mike, they're the first team since the 1977 Oakland Raiders to win a Super Bowl and then return all 22 starters, which is mind-boggling in this era of free agency and movement and everything that we see. To bring back all 22 starters, I spoke to Hall of Fame tight end Tony Gonzalez yesterday, and he's talking about, like, if there's ever a team that can go 17-0 in a regular season, this is a team to do it. I don't feel so good about that. I think they're going to have some hiccups along the way. They do have a little bit of a break in the NFC South, and that Drew Brees retired, and that was a team the Saints last year till the playoffs really handled the Buccaneers. But Tampa's defense is so strong, so solid. There's been no drop-off from Tom. The offense, he's got so many weapons around him. I think Antonio Brown will be better this year because he's a little bit more worked into the flow of that offense and the game plan. So I anticipate they'll win the division. But I made a vow a couple of years ago, Mike. As long as Brady was playing, I was going to pick him to win the Super Bowl, and I went against that this year. Now that he's won 7, I said I can back off my vow to pick him every year. It's so hard to repeat in the NFL, and I went with a Chiefs and the Packers Super Bowl. But there's so many storylines tonight. Just Dak Prescott coming back. It's the Cowboys. There's so much to look. I'm fired. I haven't been this fired up to cover a football game in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, you just mentioned Dak hasn't played in, 11 weeks of the last season, and then this whole offseason he barely did anything in training camp, and he's just going to go out there and roll. And obviously we know Martin is up in the air, not going to play, so that kind of gives them a problem on the offensive line. Their line was a problem last year, but a lot of people, it's Dallas. I talked about this the other day, Rob. Dallas has 4 playoff wins since they last won the Super Bowl. Washington has won 3 playoff games since they won the Super Bowl. Yet Dallas always has high expectations, and everybody just thinks Washington stinks all the time. But the 2 of them have been equally inept, essentially, in terms of playoff success. So why do we always believe more in Dallas than we do Washington? I think the answer is obvious, but are these 2 teams, the co-leaders in the East?
Let's put what you just said, that's a great stat, in perspective. 4 playoff wins since they last won a Super Bowl, or the same amount of playoff wins that Nick Foles has by himself. That's what the Cowboys have done since they last won the Super Bowl. But, yeah, you're right in that they haven't had much success in those 2 decades, yet you always look at the Cowboys and the weapons that they have and the whole America's team, and they're on Hard Knocks, and everybody talks up the Cowboys. I did pick them as my division winner because I just look at the firepower that they have on offense with Dak coming back if he's healthy, and that's the key. If Dak Prescott's healthy, like he was on pace last year for a tremendous season, a historic season, and even though they were only 2-3 in his 5 starts, that defense was so bad. They were miserable. They were terrible. I can't imagine that defense this year is going to be this bad again. I love their addition of Micah Parsons.
Right.
They bring in Dan Quinn, a defensive coordinator. I think they're going to be improved defensively to the point where they should win a close division race. And I think Washington, because Washington is so solid, so strong up front defensively, They just absolute giants on that defensive line that I think their defense is going to keep them in games. And if your defense has you sticking around in the fourth quarter, Ryan Fitzmagic can pull out something along the way and maybe win a game here or there. So I think that Dallas is going to be in that 9-10 win range, and Washington will be in that 8-9 win range. And then you'll have the Giants and Eagles battling it out for third place. But I think this could be a division race where 3 games is the difference between first and last place, where you could have a 7-win last place team and a 10-win first place team.
Well, speaking of Dallas and the NFC East, Rob, Tony Romo recently told Jeff Kerr over at CBS Sports that they could win 10 or 11 games. And he said the reason why is people don't realize their offensive line is far healthier this year than last. Just that by itself makes them way better. Now, we all agree the offensive line's better, but what does that mean in the win-loss department for Philadelphia?
I think it's a 2-win differential. I think having that offensive line healthy is going to instantly give you 2 more wins. But how healthy are they going to be, Mike? Are they going to stick around and start 12 to 14 games together? We're already seeing Brandon Brooks show up on the injury report this week as a limited participant in practice. And even though they have depth along that offensive line, and I think one of the bright sides to all those injuries last year, even though it's never a good thing, is that you were able to develop some of the younger players, and some of the younger offensive linemen have some game experience now. And you have a guy like Andre Dillard, who's a former first-round pick, who's backing up Jordan Mailata, who with 10 games last year in a strong training camp is your left tackle protecting Jalen Hurts' blind side. If that offensive line is healthy, if Brandon Brooks does in fact start week 1 and play up to his capabilities, a 3-time Pro Bowl right guard. Lane Johnson comes back, a 3-time Pro Bowl right tackle. In the middle, Jason Kelsey's a 3-time All-Pro center, which means a heck of a lot more than being a Pro Bowl player. If he can have another Pro Bowl, All-Pro caliber season, and then Jordan Mailata, hopefully he continues to develop, and I don't see any reason why not. A lot of people look at Jordan Mailata and think he may be the best of the bunch, Mike. He might be the guy who eventually is on that side anchoring the O-line for a decade. And in the middle, Isaac Seumalo, I think, is a placeholder right now for Landon Dickerson, and eventually when he's healthy, we'll see him in the lineup. But Tony Romo saying that doesn't surprise me. He knows the value and the importance of an offensive line. And as the offensive line is able to play together, work together, and protect Jalen Hurts, allow him to be comfortable back there, make his reads, make his throws, and really establish a run game too, because those guys up front, they love to run block. And you can hear that from any offensive lineman. All they want to do is run block. And I do believe that Nick Sirianni is going to rely a little bit more on the run game than Doug Peterson did.
I'm interested to see how he utilized, especially this week, Rob, where their offensive line should be a big check mark against this Atlanta front, and how Sirianni utilizes that in week 1. What does he do in week 1 where I think he has to know he has an advantage up front, right?
Yeah, and that's where you got to work your strengths. You got to work to maximize what you can do there. And when you have an offensive line that can dominate, that's where you got to attack this Atlanta Falcons football team. And Atlanta was pretty poor on defense last year. They kind of tried to shore up their secondary. They added a couple safeties. They're hoping that their first-round pick at corner last year, Terrell, can come back this year and be a little bit better, make some improvement in year 2. But I think you can attack this team up front. I think you can attack them through the run. You can utilize Miles Sanders, Kenny Gainwell, even Boston Scott. And I want to see how he works in Devontae Smith and Jalen Reagor, not just in the deep passing game, Mike, but early on in the game. Give me a jet sweep. Give me something. Do whatever you can to get the ball in your playmakers' hands. And for that reason, I think the Eagles will be very competitive in this game, and it'll come down to a fourth quarter play here or there.
I'm interested to see if he, I don't want to say gets conservative, but goes to Old Faithful and gets Ertz or Goddard as his guys in week number 1 until he feels more comfortable about what Jalen Hurts is. Has that line, turn around, give it to Sanders, utilize the backs out of the backfield, and use the tight ends until he figures out who Hurts is.
You can't go wrong throwing the ball to Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert. If you're throwing it to those two guys at 8, 9, 10, 11 yards a clip, you're moving the chains. You're controlling the clock. You're keeping the offense on the field. You're keeping Matt Ryan and the Falcons offense off the field. And I think that's something that we will see. And that's a strategy that I would anticipate Nick Sirianni going towards. And that's utilizing a 2 tight end set. And I don't know how much 12 personnel he'll be in versus what other personnel he's going to use, what other packages he's going to use. But in Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert, you have 2 proven established guys at that position who are matchup mismatches at times, depending on what the defense is going to try and do to stop those guys. And Jalen Hurts, I'm sure, has a comfort level. He threw more to Zach Ertz in the preseason, and he didn't play much, but he threw to him. And I think he will continue to target his tight ends, and that'll just open stuff up, man. That'll open things up for Devontae Smith and Jalen Reagor and dare I say somebody like a Quez Watkins going deep. Maybe you might see one. I see one big play this game. I don't know who it's going to be from, but one home run ball, whether it's Quez, Jalen, Devontae. I think there's a connection of over 50 yards at least one time.
We had Brian Baldinger on yesterday, Rob. I asked him about the matchup, and this was the answer he gave me. I almost fell out of my seat.
Expect him to go to Atlanta and steamroll them.
I expect them to go to Atlanta and steamroll them.
Wow.
And that was based on he thinks their offensive line is just going to do damage and that their front is no good. Now, I thought that. I said, steamroll them. Wow, a road win early. You wonder what kind of momentum that could change for the entire season. We saw in 2017, they won that game down in Washington and never really turned back. I'm not saying this is a Super Bowl team, but it certainly could help a lot of young guys if they can go down and get a road win in that manner.
No doubt, because a road win like that against a team, even though they struggled last year, that still has a guy who's a former NFL MVP in Matt Ryan, would go a long way towards helping these guys build some more confidence. And then you got a tough game next week against the San Francisco 49ers at home, but it's got to be that one game at a time mentality. And to hear somebody who I have tremendous respect for, I know you do, Baldy, saying steamroll Atlanta, and he's an offensive lineman, and he's looking at that O-line, and he's hoping that you run the ball. If you run the ball, I never see any more 50-50 in the NFL, but if you're close to 50-50 and you can dominate those guys up front, I think you have an opportunity where that run game will establish things and open things up, and they may have a chance. I don't think it'll happen.
Rob, you know how much Baldy likes Mailata, right? I mean, he has been one guy who's really liked him. It sounds like he likes Dickerson as much, if not more.
There's a lot to like there, too, in Landon Dickerson. He's a guy who has been a tremendous, excellent player in college, and even though he's had these injuries, and that's been a big thing, and if it wasn't for these injuries, Landon Dickerson would have been a surefire first-round pick in the first round of the NFL draft. And he's got so much ability up front, and this is a guy who I think, as I said earlier, Isaac Seumalo is just a placeholder until Landon Dickerson is completely healthy. They feel comfortable bringing him in there, putting him out there, and he could do so much as far as his movement laterally and dominate guys. I'm excited to see what Landon Dickerson can do once they bring him in, because the right side of that offensive line has for a long time now been the strength of the Eagles unit up there. Even when JP was on the left side, he's been on the downside of his career for about half a decade. And now he's finally out of here and he's in Chicago. So I think maybe Jordan Mailata and Landon Dickerson, the duo together at some point late this season, midway through this season, in October, can start to become a very dominant duo on that side.
Rob, I know you got a chance to catch up with Rodney McLeod. His obviously up in the air. It looks like he will not play on Sunday. It seems likely, but
highly doubtful. Yeah,
very doubtful. Darius Slay might have spilled those beans a little bit yesterday. He was an LP. He does look like he's moving pretty well. So give me something from that conversation with Rodney that stood out.
One of the things was the belief and the confidence that Rodney and the rest of the guys have in Jalen Hurts. We've talked about it so often, but he really has. So there's so much confidence in Jalen, and far more so than anybody thought from the Eagles front office, who continue to look around and keep their options open. But those players, man, they believe in Jalen. They really do. And there's another clip in there that I didn't post yet about Rodney talking about Nick Sirianni. Just loves his approach, his energy, his passion, the way he attacks things, the way he teaches, the way he interacts with players. And you see that from Nick, you see that from Jalen, and it filters down. And when you have a veteran voice like Rodney McLeod, who's been around for a while, who's been through several quarterback changes on this team, and he's been through a coaching change and won a Super Bowl and had success, and he's a leader and he's a captain, and he looks at Nick Sirianni favorably. He looks at Jonathan Gannon favorably. He's high on Jalen Hurts. You can't help but look at it and say, hey, this is all good stuff. This is all a positive for the Eagles fans if you're looking at trying to take out some hope from what to expect from this team this year.
Rob Maaddi from the Associated Press covers the NFL. He will be at the game tonight and, of course, covering the Eagles and the Falcons. Rob, we've got Faith on the Field this weekend, Saturday at 9, Sunday at 6:30, and a great conversation with Brandon Graham is what you will hear this weekend.
Yep, it's a terrific conversation. BG really shows his vulnerable side, man, his weaknesses, and he talks about overcoming some things and going through. I put out a clip today, a covenant of purity before he married his wife. They took a vow for a year and a half, and BG talks about that struggle. Any guy knows what that kind of struggle is, but good for him. He was able to do that, and it's BG like you've never seen him before. You know, he's always laughing, joking. This is a really spiritual, serious side of BG, and of course, he's entertaining as always.
Well, it's a great conversation Saturday morning at 9, Sunday at 6:30. Rob Maaddi, Faith on the Field. He'll be back on Tuesday to give us some insight on what we saw from Eagles and Falcons. So do the Eagles go on the road and get that first one?
I don't think so, Mike. As much as I want to say they win this game, I'm going to take the veteran quarterback. People want to write off Matt Ryan. He was at 23 touchdowns, only 11 interceptions last year, 93 passer rating. Kyle Pitts coming in there is going to replace Julio Jones, more than replace him, even though he's a tight end and Julio's a wide receiver. Calvin Ridley's a stud at wide receiver. I'm going to take the veteran, proven quarterback in a tight game to win. Field goal late, maybe 26-23, something like that.
All right, Rob, of course, tonight we've got the Cowboys and the Buccaneers, and you can hear that game right here on 97.3 ESPN. Rob Maaddi, thanks, pal.
Appreciate it, Mike.
And Rob Maaddi's appearance today on the Sports Bash is brought to you by Resorts Casino Hotel in Atlantic City. It is the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. And, of course, we told you about the free mobile app. You can download the app in the Apple Store, Google Play. Make sure you get that thanks to our friends at First Bank of Seattle. You can message us through the app, listen to the show live on the go, and don't forget, get all the content from our team of writers at 973ESPN.com. Well, you heard the NFL schedule first look. I gave you all the lines, my favorite 5. Earlier in the show, we talked to John Clayton, Ben Golliver. If you missed any of them, check them out on our YouTube channel. You can always check that out. It's been a fun show today. Back here at Chickies and Pete's at Tropicana in Atlantic City every Thursday. But I want to remind you, Indeed helps you hire great people fast. Indeed delivers 4 times more hires than any other job sites combined, according to Talent Nest. Visit Indeed.com/credit, Indeed.com/credit. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN and that free mobile app. We'll wrap up the show when we come back. Don't forget game night tonight. Andy McNamara is here with Josh, and then Thursday Night Football on 97.3 ESPN.